Thousands of Americans are waking up and discovering that a job they thought they could rely on for retirement is about to get wiped out by AI. And this isn't just anecdotal. Thousands of people are being affected right now. And I'm going to talk today about a whole category, a whole industry that until now has never had to unionize because it was the most stable work in the world. And it's now under direct threat from AI. And it really forecasts something very, very important that's about to change in the American labor market and something we all need to be paying attention to. Hey, I'm Jake Ward. This is The Rip Current. We look at the big invisible forces that shape our lives every day. So I have a piece up at hardresetmedia.com. Hard Reset is a newsletter that covers power and politics and tech. And it's entitled Last Teller Standing, Inside Wells Fargo's AI-Driven Workforce Purge. And I spent this week speaking to bank tellers and union organizers about the big shift going on in banking right now. If you wanted a good job in America, one that could, really lead to retirement and promised stability, just the classic kind of stable, boring, good job, it was being a banker, a bank teller, a senior banker, bank manager, these things working at your local branch. You can put your kids through school. It was a great gig. Now we're seeing layoffs, big layoffs. And the place that is really the poster child for this is Wells Fargo. It's a California headquartered bank. It's the fourth largest bank in the country. And its CEO and president, a guy named Charles Scharf, was up on stage at an investor conference in December in New York City. And he basically told the crowd that he was prepared to share something that other bank leaders are, quote, afraid to say. And that is that the bank is going to lay people off, lots of people, and not as a temporary measure, but as a permanent change to how the bank does business. Because so much work can be supplemented or even replaced with AI, he told investors, quote, we are going to have lower headcount in the future. How much lower? Well, Charles Scharf's claim to fame, this guy who ran Bank of New York and Visa before he came to Wells Fargo, his claim to fame is that when he arrived at Wells Fargo in 2019, he began laying people off to the tune of about 65,000 jobs. He reduced the bank's employees from 275,000 down to 210,000 people. This is what he told investors on stage. So that's about, and that includes about 5,600 workers laid off this year. And he, meanwhile, has been able to boast that the bank's profits are growing. Wells Fargo, as you may recall, back in 2016 was the subject of a huge scandal when it was discovered that bank employees were basically inventing fake accounts to meet sales quotas set on them by the company. And that scandal led the federal government to put a big asset cap on the bank. Basically, you're not allowed as a bank to hold more than a certain amount of money when the feds put an asset cap on you. And in this case, I think it was something like it's like $1.5 trillion or something. It was a big amount of money, but still a cap that for a bank makes a big, big difference. So that cap has now been lifted. It was lifted this past summer. And that means that suddenly it is free to pull in more money and invest more money and make more money. So the bank is wringing more profit, it turns out of fewer people, right? They're down 65,000 people, and yet the profits are up. So Scharf talked about a 20% growth in new credit card accounts, a 19% jump in auto lending balances, 12% loan growth in commercial banking, and a 14% increase in investment banking fees. So this is a bank that is really firing on all cylinders in terms of making money. But Scharf said in a statement, quote, we have funded significant increased investments in infrastructure and business growth by driving greater savings. Okay, I've given you all of this background to then tell you a little bit about the life of bank tellers. So I spoke to a couple of different people who work inside Wells Fargo's. One is a bank teller named Danielle Oliva. She's worked there for about 3 years. She's in a branch in Artesia, New Mexico. It's the only Wells Fargo in that town. And she says, as a result, it really feels like a community bank. She says that when she started there, she was one of 3 tellers that would work out front. On the line is the word they use in banking. And those 3 tellers served a, regular circulation of customers who would come back again and again and again. She says that she would know their families, their names, she knew, everything about them essentially as they came through week after week. But over time, that 3 people became 2 people, and that 2 people have now become 1 person, such that she is the only person now working in the front of that bank. Meanwhile, Wells Fargo is pushing a lot of app interactions. They're pushing their apps saying that you can do everything you need to on that. And most of your interactions on that app are in many cases guided by and surveilled by AI, according to Danielle and others I've spoken to. So more and more the bank is trying to emphasize technological solutions over human solutions in getting the banking done. So that has led these bankers who have seen their colleagues laid off, have heard Charlie Scharf's plans, and can clearly see the writing on the wall, it's caused them to unionize. So I began speaking to labor organizers at the Consumer Communications Workers of America, CWA, and they tell me that 28 different branches of Wells Fargo have voted to unionize across the United States in 14 different states. That is not just a big number for that one bank. That's a big number for banking at all. Banking in this country has never really unionized before. And that is because, again, it's been a really steady job. And at one time, it was a job where you could really have a single earner in the household doing that. But according to labor organizers, people who've been working at this bank for 20 to 25 years say that now they have to both work that job and a second job to make ends meet. And so the pay has stagnated even as costs have go up, and the work is greater. I spoke to a senior premier banker at an Albuquerque branch named Sabrina Perez, and she says that it's very similar in her branch, that the lines are longer, that there's a sort of sleight of hand going on where the wait time is greater, the pressure on the tellers is greater, and also now these employees, the Wells Fargo employees, are, like so many people in America, employed on an at-will basis. You don't need cause to fire them. You can just cut them loose whenever you want to, which is in part how Charlie Scharf is laying so many people off. And the work, she says, is being automated such that it is doubling or tripling up. The work is not being removed. It's just being piled on a smaller number of people. So that's causing these folks to all vote to unionize. And the communications workers are taking them in as siblings, as labor siblings, and they're all getting into the bargaining process, trying to change the at-will arrangement, trying to make changes to how their relationship with their employer at Wells Fargo works. And again, it's just a big, big shift. There's a big shift in labor in the United States, and it really speaks to the shift from a threat to what was mostly blue-collar workers when it came to technology, to now a threat to white-collar workers. And this is in no way to say that blue-collar workers in some way should be under threat and white-collar workers should not. That is not the case. But the contract with white-collar workers, at least in something like a bank, for so long had been, you won't need a union because we as your employer don't expose you to hazardous materials. You don't, lose a finger on the line, right? That kind of stuff was the purview of blue-collar jobs, and that's why, in theory, you needed unions. Well, now, white-collar workers are discovering, well, it doesn't matter that my body's not in threat. My job's under threat, and so I need to get involved in the union. So labor organizing is really coming for this, is growing in this white-collar sector that in a way that I think really forecasts something about all kinds of sectors that are beginning to think about unionizing as they come under threat from AI. And one just sort of final postscript here that I think is really important to point out is there's a very smart fellow at the Brookings Institute named Molly Kinder who pointed out in a conversation I had with her that the greatest threat of AI right now to jobs really falls on women without a college degree. That jobs that traditionally have been available to women without a college degree that could lead to a good middle-class existence and then retirement, clerical, admin, bookkeeping, these sorts of gigs, are being wiped out by AI. And when I spoke to these bank tellers, they pointed out again and again that the vast majority of branch managers at a bank like Wells Fargo are women. It is absolutely dominated by women in terms of branch leadership. Retail finance is a very female job, and it doesn't require a college degree. It's been historically a path to a stable retirement-ready career for people who don't have a college degree, and it is also, retail finance, heavily represented by underserved communities, by minority communities. And so that this push toward automation is going to really fall very heavily on non-college educated women and people from Black and brown communities. And so, and meanwhile, as one of the bank tellers pointed out to me, the money saved is going to basically accrue up to a largely white and male leadership at the top of these organizations. So it is really a very powerful an important forecast of something important to come. You can read the whole thing at hardresetmedia.com. And I really think that we all need to be sort of paying attention to the ways in which AI, like water, is going to seep into society and into the labor market in a way that I think is going to catch a lot of people by surprise and is going to require some pretty active organizing to push back against, at least according to the people that I've been speaking to. The Rip Current is produced and created by me, Jacob Ward. And if you liked this show and you want more content like this, go to theripcurrent.com, where I publish a weekly newsletter that covers these same sorts of stories of the big invisible forces that have us all in their grip. And if you want to really do me a favor, if you could go to where you have listened to this or watched it and like it, share it, or even better, review it. Holy cow, is that helpful? It's the best possible way for me to find a new audience. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening.